Just a small clarification. It's not accidental carotid coverage, it's actually accidental carotid occlusion. And that's because the device with its covered portion was still distal to the carotid. So my patient is a 46-year-old male who is actually a case of a relapse of acute leukemia. He presented with hoarseness of voice and chest pain for the last 10 days, was hemodynamically unstable, and underwent a CT scan, which on these axial and sagittal oblique sections, you can very well see that this is a pseudoaneurysm of the upper part of the descending thoracic aorta. And on these reconstructed images, you can make out that this aneurysm begins just a shade beyond the left subclavian artery. So our plan was very clear. We have to go and cover across the left subclavian artery. And also because we had a good distance between the left carotid and the left subclavian, we could not need to cover the left carotid artery at the same time. So we have the pseudoaneurysm, which is of maximum diameter of 9.7 centimeters. And there was, in addition, on CT findings which suggested narrowing of both the bronchi because of the hugely dilated lesion with collapse and consolidation of the left upper lobe. And because of his pre-existing disease, he also had hepatosplenomegaly with bilateral enlarged kidneys with leukemia involvement. So the plan was to stent graft this with coverage of the left subclavian artery intentionally. These are the movies in series which initially show you the marker pictal injection with the measurements for the device, which was a Medtronic Valiant device of 28 into 28 and a length of 150. This is the stepwise procedure of how the stent graft is being positioned. So we have our stent graft, which is initially positioned proximal to the innominate. And once we have uncovered the first, unsheathed the first two covered segments of the graft, we end up with the fully released graft. And during this process, what happened was there was an inadvertent release of the graft somewhat more distal to the initial intended position. We wanted to have the covered portion, which is indicated by these 8 markers, these markers which are number 8, beginning just beyond the left carotid, but we ended up having the device migrate somewhat more distally. So therefore, we thought that this is not going to give us a good proximal seal. We also had, at the same time, some external complications. My previous speaker talked about so many internally occurring complications. We had this one internal complication. We also had, simultaneously occurring external complications like this glove of the operator who was holding the proximal end of the device actually got squeezed into the proximal end of the device as the device was being released, and ultimately the glove had to be taken off. But obviously, no problems occurred. So what the next plan was to put an extension proximally so that we have a proximal seal with the device again beginning with its covered portion just distal to the left carotid artery. And when we put this second device in, that was the extension, we noticed another thing, and that was also in retrospect, that the lock which is there, which is the safety lock, was found to be unlocked. And before we released the device, we fortunately realized this. We took the device out, we again went in, we made sure that the lock was safely in place, and then we put in the extension. Now, after the extension was put in, if you can notice on this second movie here, there is some slow flow in the left carotid artery. And if I can show you the blown out images here, there is actually an osteostenosis which has occurred. Now, please trust me, as I also shown you on the previous CT images, that this patient did not have any atherosclerosis of the carotid, and the carotid osteum was absolutely normal. To confirm that whether we were actually dealing with an impending carotid occlusion, we did an on-table ultrasound Doppler, which shows that there is an almost venous type of flow pattern in the left carotid artery. So the plan here was either to do a surgical bypass to the carotid from the ascending aorta, or to do a chimney. Not a chimney in the traditional sense that we don't have to put a covered stent because this carotid is not arising from the aneurysmal segment, but to put a plain or an uncovered stent across the left carotid. And that's what we did. We punctured the carotid artery, took the guide wire into the ascending aorta, and then from there on it was not a problem. This is the final picture with the stent in the carotid. This was a 9 into 40 silver stent. That is the injection that has been done from the carotid sheath, which shows that the graft and the stent are functioning quite nicely. This is to confirm that the flow pattern in the carotid artery has reverted to the normal state. Just in the backdrop of this case, I would want to show you another case where we had a similar complication. that this is again the CT image of this patient who had a type B dissection with an aberrant left subclavian artery coming off from the dissected false lumen, which was also aneurysmal. Again, you can see this was actually a young patient who had a normal left carotid artery. And once we started deploying the device, actually you can notice that during this procedure itself, the carotid has actually started to stenose. And then at the end, once the device has been completely deployed, the carotid has got occluded. At this time, the surgeon actually didn't give us much time to think about what else could be done. He went ahead and did a surgical bypass to the carotid artery from the ascending aorta. And if I can, yeah. So you can see here, this is the graft to the left carotid artery from the ascending aorta, functioning quite nicely in our previous patient. So what are the teaching points from my presentation? Well, all of us should always be aware that you can have a bad day at office. And the easiest of your case, just like the previous speaker, the easiest of the cases that you think is going to be, can be your toughest. You need to have very, very careful deployment technique. But still, even in the hands of the most experienced operators, there can be unintentional distal device positioning, as happened in our first graft, or occlusion of an arch vessel like the carotid artery with our extension device that can happen during these procedures. So for these reasons, you have to be always prepared with your backup plans. And what are your backup plans? You need to have your extensions for proximal extension or distal extension, or your branch vessel devices, which could be either covered or uncovered stents. And then just a small teaching point here, that whenever you're holding the proximal end of the device, always hold it from this only expanded portion. Don't hold it simultaneously from the catheter which is attached to it, because your glove can get squeezed in during the release. Always check for the distal end that it should be completely and carefully locked before deploying and not have a complication like we had. And obviously, you know, when you have so many people working together, you have the cardiac surgeons, you have the radiologist, and if at all there is a cardiologist, then you can always put your brains together and decide how to get out of a bad situation. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you. Good case, good rescue. Any question?
Actually, I have a small question. It's actually an advice that I seek from, you know, all the eminent operators here as to what could be the reason, in your opinion, of the carotid getting occluded. Because this happened in 2 cases with us, and our hypothesis, because there is no report of this kind in the literature, all of them have been with intentional or unintentional coverage of the left carotid artery with the stent graft. Now this was just because of the uncovered portion of the stent graft being across the left carotid. So our hypothesis was that because you've acutely changed the angulation of the ascending aorta and the proximal arch, the left carotid is actually getting squeezed between the very limited space in the upper part of the mediastinum, which lies between the brachiocephalic veins and the arch. So if you have an opinion, I would really appreciate that.
Thing that could be that whether you dissected a flap there on the aortic arch, you could not have done that by any chance. No.
We didn't see any haziness or any extra lumen outside.
The crumpling effect will occur if you have both sides of the aortic arch, ascending and descending. Then you may get a crumpling effect. Otherwise, because you are more on the left side of the aortic arch.
Yeah.
So that probably is unlikely.
But if you saw those images, actually it was a concentric stenosis.
Maybe.
Professor Buckley, a question?
No, I was just going to comment. I think that it's possible that the metal part on the stent graft pushed some of the lining of the aorta forward. And we've seen that do that. In fact, I had it happen to me on a patient that I was treating for a dissection that had exactly that problem. It pushed it and narrowed the orifice of the carotid. We had to do something about it. So I think that when you're dealing with really non-atherosclerotic vessels, those metal, I call them fronds, that stick out in front of the stent graft, when it goes to deploy, can actually push things forward a little bit. And you know, they are a cause for a retrograde dissection, and it's really a serious problem. But I think sometimes they just push the intima and media forward a little bit, and it bunches up around the origin of the carotid, because there's so little tolerance for distance there.
Okay, thank you. We have to stop the discussion and we move on. Professor Buckley.